Welcome back to World Gone Weird. Buckle up, buttercups, because the crazy train is leaving the station and it's got a cargo hold full of, well, you'll see.
Hello, everyone. I'm trying to stay optimistic, but the news is challenging, let's say. Trying to find the silver linings where I can.
All right, folks, hold on to your hats. It's about to get bumpy if the headlines are anything to go by. And when are they ever wrong?
Greetings. I'll be approaching this with a healthy dose of skepticism and a demand for verifiable facts, as always, as the world seems to be getting weirder by the day.
Okay, let's dive right into the deep end. Israel's planning to occupy Gaza again? Is this a remake? I feel like I've seen this movie before, and it didn't win any Oscars.
Hang on, a humanitarian zone, controlled food distribution? Is this the part where they conveniently forget to distribute the food? It sounds an awful lot like a concentration camp with a nicer name.
The term humanitarian zone is particularly jarring. It's a term that, from a scientific perspective, requires careful scrutiny. What are the measurable metrics for determining its efficacy? What are the independently verified protocols for ensuring the equitable distribution of resources? And how do we account for the psychological impact of displacement and restricted access to basic necessities on a population already experiencing immense trauma?
Oh, I'm sure there's a PowerPoint presentation somewhere with lots of pie charts and happy stock photos. But yeah, I'm seeing red flags flapping in the breeze here.
It just feels so counterproductive. Occupying Gaza and imposing military rule, isn't that exactly what fuels resentment and future conflict? I understand the stated goal is to end Hamas rule, but this approach, it feels like it guarantees a perpetual cycle of violence.
Well, sure, perpetual conflict is good for the military-industrial complex. Can't sell weapons if everyone's holding hands and singing Kumbaya. Now can we?
That's a somewhat cynical but not entirely unfounded perspective, Jimmy. From a system dynamics viewpoint, continued conflict introduces positive feedback loops that reinforce instability. The economic incentives for arms manufacturers, coupled with political pressures, can create a self-perpetuating cycle that's hard to break. How can we scientifically model these feedback loops to better understand the potential long-term consequences?
It's just, what's the end game here? Assuming they can control Gaza militarily, what then? Another generation growing up in refugee camps with nothing but hate in their hearts. Seems short-sighted.
And the article mentions Israel's cabinet approved a plan to help Gaza residents emigrate on a voluntary basis. Voluntary? When they are pushed into smaller and smaller areas and running out of food, how voluntary is that really?
Voluntary immigration, folks, is when you pack your bags because you want a new life in Tuscany, not when you're being bombed out of your house and starved. Call it what it is, forced displacement.
The use of the term voluntary basis is particularly concerning. It demands a rigorous examination of the factors influencing people's decisions to emigrate. How can we accurately assess the degree to which these decisions are truly voluntary, given the coercive environment and the limited alternatives available to the population? We need independent, unbiased studies to understand the psychological and social pressures at play.
Right? It's like saying we're offering you a free one-way ticket to the moon. Totally optional, but the Earth is about to explode. Real choice, guys. Real choice, guys. Real choice.
Former U.S. officials are also commenting on this situation. Dan Shapiro worried that it could last for years and it could cost hostages' lives. Amir Avivi suggested they should have implemented it earlier in the war. It is a wide variety of opinions, but there is no clear solution in sight. It's hard to find a positive angle to this.
A positive angle? Well, I suppose if you own stock in a company that makes barbed wire, this is a banner day. For the rest of us, not so much.
The spectrum of expert opinions highlights the inherent uncertainty and complexity of the situation. It underscores the need for a more rigorous scientific approach to evaluating the potential consequences of different policy options. What predictive models are being used to assess the long-term impacts of military occupation and forced displacement on regional stability and human well-being?
Okay, let's pivot, because I need a palate cleanser. Trump's Golden Dome project. He wants a missile defense system that covers the entire United States. It's like trying to swat a fly with a tactical nuke. The expense alone.
My first thought was the cost. Resources could be used for proactive community support, climate resilience, or infrastructure. I get the defensive posture, but this feels like a significant investment in defensive measures when maybe those funds can be put to better use.
An Iron Dome for the whole country? That's just chef's kiss, peak American exceptionalism. We're going to build a giant shield and hide under it while the rest of the world figures out how to talk to each other? How about trying diplomatic solutions instead?
From an engineering perspective, the sheer scale of the Golden Dome proposal presents significant logistical and technical challenges. The article highlights the need for a layered system involving space-based radars, missile interceptors, and laser weapons. Before committing substantial resources, a thorough cost-benefit analysis is crucial. What are the opportunity costs of investing in such a system, compared to alternative investments in, say, infrastructure resilience or cybersecurity?
And the article name drops Space Force General Getline, saying the Golden Dome will require a Manhattan Project-level whole-of-government approach. Last time I checked, the Manhattan Project ended with, well, not exactly a feel-good story.
And what are the potential unintended consequences? If we develop such an advanced defensive system, does it incentivize other countries to develop even more sophisticated offensive weapons, escalating the arms race? And what about space? Is it ethical to weaponize it this way?
Oh, ethics. How quaint. When has ethics ever stopped anyone from building a bigger bomb? Look, this isn't about defense. It's about stroking egos. It's about saying we're number one. We're the best. We have the shiniest toys.
The potential for weaponizing space raises profound ethical and scientific questions. The deployment of space-based weapon systems could significantly destabilize the existing international order, increasing the risk of miscalculation and accidental conflict. What international treaties and safeguards are in place to prevent the weaponization of space? And how effective are they likely to be in a rapidly evolving technological landscape?
The article notes that the protection zone may start around major cities like New York and Washington, D.C., or sensitive military sites before expanding to protect the entire homeland. So basically, if you live in, rural Montana, you're so on. Thanks, Golden Dome.
It creates a sense of unequal protection, doesn't it? Makes people feel less safe and secure depending on where they live. I'm skeptical of whether the Golden Dome plan is actually going to go through.
It's all smoke and mirrors, a distraction. While everyone's gawking at the giant golden dome in the sky, they are stealing your wallet.
Indeed, the psychological impact of the Golden Dome project on the population also warrants consideration. Will it foster a sense of security and resilience, or will it exacerbate anxieties about potential threats and the fragility of modern civilization? We need studies on this.
All right, let's move on to something slightly less terrifying, but equally bonkers. Trump and Musk are firing thousands of federal workers, and now there are espionage concerns. I feel like I'm watching a spy movie directed by the Coen brothers. It's both absurd and deeply unsettling.
This is concerning. We need qualified people working in these government jobs to ensure we are functioning properly. If Trump and Musk are firing them, it creates an opening for bad actors to fill the void.
The mass departure of federal workers with sensitive knowledge creates a statistically significant increase in the risk of espionage. The article highlights the potential for Russia, China, and other adversaries to recruit informants. A rigorous risk assessment is needed, quantifying the probability of sensitive information being compromised and identifying the most vulnerable individuals and agencies. And who is verifying this information and its sources?
The article says that these departments and agencies oversee vast amounts of data that include personal information on Americans as well as sensitive information about national security and government operations. Are they not worried about leaking personal information? I'd be worried about it.
Exactly. The article mentions the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, the Pentagon, and the Department of Energy are among those who could be vulnerable to this kind of theft. Why is this being done?
Well, I don't know. Maybe Musk needs to free up office space for his dog-walking robot army. Or maybe Trump wants to sell the nuclear codes to the highest bidder. I mean, who knows anymore? The point is, they are slashing and burning our own security.
The internet has made it far easier for foreign nations to identify and recruit potential informants. Now, all you need is a LinkedIn subscription, and you can quickly find former federal officials in search of work. It does bring up a point. There needs to be some controls for individuals to prevent them from selling information for profit.
Right? Looking for work. Former top secret squirrel whisperer. Knows all the best nuts. DM for rates. What could go wrong?
Peyton's advice for former federal employees looking for work? It's the same as her guidance for federal counterespionage officials, she said. Be on high alert. That doesn't ease my worry any.
Oh, sure. Be on high alert. That'll stop a determined spy. You think Aldrich Ames read that advice and said, "Oh, darn. Guess I can't sell out my country now."
This situation requires a multi-pronged approach involving enhanced background checks, robust cybersecurity protocols, and comprehensive counterintelligence efforts. But there is a huge question. What specific measures are being taken to mitigate the increased risk of espionage following these mass layoffs? And what resources are being allocated to counterintelligence agencies to address this emerging threat?
Last but not least, the Gaza death toll has passed 50,000 as Israel expands new airstrikes. It's a staggering, heartbreaking number.
50,000 lives lost. That's a bleak and heavy milestone. And this is after they broke a ceasefire. How do we move forward when something like this has happened?
50,000. Numbers just become meaningless after a while, don't they? We see it on the news, shrug and move on to the next outrage. But those are people, families, futures that have been wiped out, and for what really?
The reported death toll of over 50,000 Palestinians in Gaza raises serious questions about the proportionality of force employed and the effectiveness of the precision-guided weapons. It requires a rigorous scientific analysis of the casualty data, disaggregated by demographics, location, and time of incident. Independent verification is essential to ensure the accuracy and completeness of these figures, while taking into account the fact that it is difficult to obtain an accurate report in the fog of war.
There's the part where it says Israel's military ordered thousands of Palestinians to leave the heavily destroyed Tel al-Sultan neighborhood in the southern city of Rafah. So they're being displaced under fire. How long can this last, is what I would be asking.
The reports of displaced Palestinians fleeing repeatedly and the descriptions of the desperate conditions they face are deeply troubling. The reports show displacement under fire. It seems that things are only getting worse.
It's not just about the numbers, it's about the suffering. The human cost of this conflict is unfathomable, and all I can see is more violence.
What efforts are being made to address the root causes of this conflict? And how can we promote a more just and sustainable peace? Where are the objective reports that confirm the root causes? Otherwise, it's just conjecture.
That just about wraps up our little tour of the apocalypse. Anyone need a drink?
I think we all do. Thanks for listening, everyone. Remember to look for the helpers, even when things seem bleak.
Stay skeptical, folks. Question everything. And maybe invest in a good therapist.
Indeed. Always demand empirical data and question the narratives presented to you. Until next time.